Okay, hello everyone. It is now 6:30. Our Sunnyside City Council regular meeting for Monday, November 9th, 2020. This is a 20th City Council meeting held via online conferencing application. All City Council members and city staff are participating from remote locations, and the meeting will continue as long as there's a quorum. Please allow one person to speak at a time. I will call on every member to make sure you have had an opportunity to ask any questions. I will now ask our City Clerk Renteria to start our roll call vote, please.
Mayor Guerrero.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Here.
Councillor Farmer.
Here.
Councillor Henry.
Here.
Councillor Restucci.
Here.
Councillor Hicks.
Here.
Councillor Broersma.
I am here.
Thank you. City Manager Casey.
Here.
City Clerk Renteria, I am here. Finance Director Alba.
Is excused.
Fire Chief Anderson.
Unless he's joined the call, he may be detained tonight. I don't believe he's planning to be absent, but he just may not be able to join us right now.
Okay. Police Chief Escalera.
I'm here.
Public Works Director Fisher.
I'm here.
Okay, perfect, Mayor. We're all here.
Thank you very much. And our first item we have is our superintendent for the Census School District, Mr. Kevin McKay. Mr. City Manager, you want to do an intro or do to go right into Mr. McKay's presentation today?
I can do a very brief intro. Superintendent McKay recently shared with community and we passed along to council the school district's plans for a phased hybrid reopening of in-person instruction, and that just got underway last week. And so the superintendent, we felt this would be a good opportunity to update you on how that plan is set to go forward and their progress to date. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation tonight to speak with you. I also appreciate you putting me at the first part of the agenda, as I have a school board meeting here at 7:30 this evening. So greatly appreciate it. Good to see everybody. Like all of us, we wish it was in person, but this will make it. We have started in-person learning. Today was day 3 of in-person learning for kindergarten through 5th grade students. It may be known also out there as a hybrid learning model. You may have heard that. And just a little bit of review of where we started at the beginning of the school year to where we are right now prior to I get into all of that. I think all of you are aware that we started the school year in a virtual learning model where all of our students were learning from a distance. That came with its own set of challenges. I can report that there was success in certain areas and there were certain challenges associated with that. We realize again the importance of in-person learning and how important that is for students. Again, that was with some mixed reviews, but again, we did find some successes as well. And I think we're going to, regardless of how we move forward, virtual learning will become part of our educational offerings to students. We then transitioned into having small groups of our highest need or highest at-risk students join for some in-person instruction. Those students are kind of categorized as students in special education. Those students who have disabilities that are in the highest need of services, educational services and other services as well. And so we've had those groups of students back on our campus. Those students who are learning the English language, and we call them level 1 monolingual students in our ELL program. They have been joining us on campus to get additional supports. And just recently, we've started plans to bring back our seniors who are in need for the support in order to get their diploma. So we have had small groups of in-person prior to the starting of larger groups. What started last Thursday was half of our elementary school students. And I want to share with you what that half means. Really, the half is half of the number of students whose parents declared that they'd want them to attend a hybrid model. And I'll get into some of those numbers here in a second. But last Thursday, half of those students came to school for a full day of instruction. I'm happy to report, but both of those days, based on all the planning, logistics, support, and so forth, turned out to be exactly what we had hoped for. Lots of smiles on parents' faces, students' faces, and staff faces. And all went well from a health and safety perspective and as well as an educational perspective, along with all of the other logistics. Those students attended on Thursday and Friday, and then the other group of students in K through 5 attended today and will attend tomorrow. And then Wednesday will be an all virtual day. A hybrid learning model, just for you to know, is a combination of in-person and virtual learning. So it is put in place in order to try to meet some of the health department requirements that they've placed on us, which is to reduce the number of students that are attending the school and then reduce the number of students who would be in close contact with each other in a classroom setting. So in order to do that, some of our students are going to be on site in person, and then some of the students are also going to be at home learning virtually. It is called an A-B model. There are students are grouped as either an A or a B, and that signifies the days of the week that they attend. A students attend on Monday and Tuesday, B students attend on Thursday and Friday. A lot of this work of where we came to determining this model came out of a lot of work that we did during the summer with advisory groups of communities, parents, staff, to determine what model may be the best one for our district. And it was determined in this model. If you remember, during the summer, we had hopes that we would start the year in a hybrid learning model. Obviously, that didn't work out. So much of the work that we did took place during the summer. We felt there's some things that we felt very important, that regardless of what model we landed on, that we thought would be very important. And then after starting the year in a virtual learning model, we thought it was even more important that parents had choice in which model they wanted their children to be involved in. So although most of the parents wanted to return to a traditional learning environment, that wasn't possible, but we did provide them the opportunity to choose if they wanted to have their children remain in the virtual learning model or transition into a hybrid. Interesting enough, some of our data that we captured really was a greater number of virtual learning parent requests than we had anticipated. This is based on all of our K through 5, and it's really holding true in our middle schools as well, that about 2/3 of the parents have chosen to have their children return to in-person, but 1/3 have decided that they'd like to keep their children at home and continue with the virtual learning. I would imagine there's a myriad of reasons as to why that is happening, but that's a significant number of students that we had to then make sure that we could offer all the appropriate services to those who decided to stay in a virtual learning model. Parents also have the choice of whether to go back and forth between the models. We know that there's a certain percentage of parents who feel like they just want to see how it goes before they send their child back to school, and then they may do so if things work out well. And we do want to have that ability for parents who want to transition in. There may be some time frames that's going to happen, but we definitely want that to happen. We also want it to go the other way. If parents, for whatever reason, are uncomfortable with it, that they can transition out and go back to virtual learning full-time as well. This is like anything dependent in a large organization. We're not only dependent on our students and our parents, but we're dependent on our workforce. And one of our greatest concerns, it has to do with our workforce and their ability to continue to stay healthy and stay COVID-free. And that is a large challenge, as you can probably imagine. We're facing challenges, especially we have high-risk employees who are not, based on doctor and recommendations, not returning to work because of that. But we also have, we've had employees in a large organization. We're going to have employees who are going to contact COVID, and the quarantining that goes along with that has a real challenge in continuing to operate a school district. I also want to make you aware of our plan dates to transition the middle schools and the high schools back into a hybrid learning model. Our middle schools are scheduled right now for November 23rd. Middle schools, that is Sierra Vista and Harrison, grades 6 through 8. They would start on a Monday and transition on November 23rd if we continue to move forward. Our high school would then transition in on December 14th. And some of you may be asking, why is there such a difference in time there? Well, that is all the guidance of our local health district and the Department of Health, that you give yourself time in between. They have asked for 3 full weeks of time in between the transition of groups of students. You also may ask why start with the younger students. The younger students are less prone to move the virus or contact the virus. And so they've asked that we start younger students first and then move forward with implementation of middle and then high school. The only thing that could change that is obviously COVID and us being prepared or any impact that COVID may have on our school district. We are putting those dates out there because we want to plan for it and attempt to make those happen. But again, we've already experienced one time where we've had to delay our start date because we simply, in my opinion, as a superintendent, were ready for it. We didn't have all the things that I felt were necessary in place in order to do it successfully. We have had some feedback from the Washington State Department of Health, who visited our buildings last Friday, and came away with great suggestions in some areas that we could improve on. But all in all, the things that we had hoped were in place, and they were viewed by outside perspective and a professional opinion that we were doing what was needed to ensure health and safety and meet the requirements. I think really that is it. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but more importantly, I think the last time I was with you guys, it was like you would like to continue to have updates on what's going on with the schools. And this is really our next step in progression, hopefully to return back to a more traditional learning model.
Thank you, Mr. McKay, for taking the time to give us an update on what school's doing to safely open for our children here in Sunnyside. So I really appreciate that. I will go down the list of council members, see if we have any questions. And actually, if anybody who has a question for Mr. McKay, please speak up, and then I'm sure he'll try to get us an answer. Okay, I think you did a great presentation, so we don't have any takers at this time. So thank you very much, and best of luck on your school board meeting this evening.
All right, I appreciate it. Good seeing everybody. Thank you. Invite me back anytime.
Will do. Okay, up next we have public comment report. Mr. City Manager, did we get any public comments via email or voice message or anything?
Mr. Mayor, no, we did not receive any public comments for this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Up next, we have our consent agenda, which consists of approval of minutes of the October 26, 2020 regular meeting, approval of payroll vouchers number 118830 through 118834, and wire transfers as listed for $622,660.64. for the period ending on November 3rd, 2020. Claim vouchers, October 26, 2020, agenda item 2C2, which is the correction. Is that for the claim vouchers that were missing the 0 digit, Mr. City Manager?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. As they were transposing that into the update for council in the last meeting packet, staff just typed one too few zeros.
Perfect. Okay, I did see that, so I wanted to clarify that. That's what we're going to approve tonight if council had any questions. Okay, claim vouchers continues approval. Claim vouchers numbers 100089 through 100121, and wire transfers as listed for $112,705.73 for the period ending on October 28th, 2020. Approved claim voucher numbers 100122 through 100156, and wire transfers as listed for $49,603.22 for the period ending on November 4th, 2020. I will now call on each council member to ensure that they have opportunity to ask any questions on these consent agenda items, and we'll start with Councilor Broersma.
I have no questions at this time, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Henry. I'll come back to Councilor Henry in a second here. Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
Councilor Restucci.
No questions.
Councilor Deputy Mayor Stremler.
No questions.
Okay, I'll try one more time. Councilor Henry.
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. City Manager, I did have a question. There was about 3 charges for reimbursement for COVID-19 testing. I was under the impression that all COVID-related expenses were going to be covered through our insurance companies. Is that not the case for us? I think you just muted yourself, Mr. City Manager.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I hit the wrong button and ended up losing.
There was about 3 of them, so I'm not sure
There
if
we
it's just a matter of the insurance reimbursing the patient or what happened there.
I'm not sure on that. If we had to send somebody outside the system, I'll follow up. I know in this instance, it's one of the firefighters, but they may have had to go somewhere to get the test done. And we'll can certainly follow up and provide that information for council as to why that wasn't reimbursed through the health, why that copay was not reimbursed.
Or I
The
guess maybe
expense itself should still be eligible for reimbursement through the CARES Act funding.
Right. I was just kind of curious because usually there is no co-pays for any cost associated with COVID. So yeah, if you could just look into it in email, see if anything, I noticed there was 3 of them that had the same charge for the same purpose. So if anything, maybe a little research there.
Okay.
That was the only question I had. What is the desire of council on this item?
I'll move to
I'll move
approve.
to approve.
I heard a motion by Councilor Borsma. I believe the second was Councilor Hicks, or was it a motion also?
I'll second it, or I'll make the motion either way, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do Councilor Borsma, then Councilor Hicks is a second. So motion by Councilor Borsma, second by Councilor Hicks to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Mayor, and just so you know, it looks like we lost Councillor Farmer and Councillor Henry.
Okay.
So
Hopefully they could join us here. Do we still
Sure.
have a quorum? Let me see, one,
we're still
two.
fine.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, let's continue and they could join us for the meeting here shortly, hopefully.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Boersma,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councillor Hicks,
Yes.
Councillor Restucci,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Yes.
Okay, you have 5 yes votes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our, actually, I think we just seen a couple individuals. See
Yeah.
one join us,
Yep, we got them both back.
588 and 698. Okay, Councilor Farmer, Councilor Henry, it looks like we lost you there for a second. We have a motion to
I'm back.
approve.
Oh,
Perfect.
I
thank
would second the motion.
you. We already got to that stage. Now we're just taking roll call, and the motion was to approve the consent
apologize.
agenda.
Okay, I would definitely vote yes to approve it.
Thank you. And Councilor Farmer.
I got shut off. I just got back on. I don't know what we're doing.
Thank you. So what we're doing is we have a motion by Councilor Borsma, a second by Councilor Hicks to approve the consent agenda as presented. And since you guys got booted off, we are waiting for your vote to see whether you're in the favor or on the negative on this one.
I'm a positive. I'm in favor.
Thank you very much. So we have 7 votes towards a yes. Is that correct, Jackie?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Up next, we have our consent agenda, which consists of the 2021 preliminary budget hearing, public hearing. Receive public comment on the 2021 preliminary budget proposal. So this is going to be a public hearing, and I'm going to read the notice here that we have for this. This public hearing is being held to receive public comment on the City of Sunnyside's 2020 budget for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2021. The concern is that this hearing be fair in form and substance as well as appearance. Council members, do any of you have a conflict of interest concerning this issue? Do any of you stand to gain or lose any financial benefit as a result of the outcome of this hearing? If your answer is yes, please speak now. Council members, can you hear and consider this in a fair and objective manner? If your answer is no, please speak now. It doesn't look like we have any audience members, but I'll still say this in case somebody is. Audience members, is there anyone in our Zoom call who objects to my participation or any other council members' participation in this proceedings? If there are objections, please speak now. Okay, hearing no objections, the public hearing is now open. Mr. City Manager, going to give us a staff report, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Would the city clerk either, do you prefer to have the advanced through the screen, or I could share my screen and do the PowerPoint from my computer?
Mr. Casey, I made you co-host.
All right, I will try to share my screen. And if this is correct, then all of you should be seeing the 2021 preliminary budget proposals opening slide.
Yes.
All right. I plan to move through this fairly quickly. Council was briefed in detail at your workshop last week on the preliminary budget. So what I'll do this evening for the public hearing is simply summarize some of the planning assumptions, move through the proposals fairly quickly, and open it for public comment. Last week, we discussed how there are quite a few complex elements that go into building a budget for our city. We look at and have to consider the structure of our budget. Each budget is made up of a number of different funds. Each may have restricted sources of revenue and have certain rules governing how they can be spent. We also have been trying to address a number of years of state audit concerns over the last 10 or so years. We had some challenges in financial stability, and we've been taking steps to try to improve our overall financial discipline, fiscal discipline. Last year, for example, we were able to end the year with all funds under budget and within the expenditure authority for the first time in over a decade. We're also looking at and taking into consideration various budget factors. Sunnyside has a somewhat limited economic base. Our housing value and poverty rates are significant factors. We've had population growth, fortunately. That's been good. That's helped add to the economy and the vitality of the community. But it's also increased demand for services. And we've had to contend with inflation like all other cities, which increased about 20 to 25% here in Washington State over the last 12 years. This year, something quite new and impactful has been the COVID-19 pandemic. It's had a significant effect through large disruptions both to supply chains, disruptions to consumer demand. It's resulted in a lingering recession both here in the United States and in many other countries, and it's brought a great deal of revenue uncertainty. In building this budget, we also paid close attention to previous council guidance. In 2019, council adopted a plan to try to build a stable fund balance in the general fund by setting aside an additional $250,000 in ending fund reserve each year. And our target for 2021 would have been, or is, $1 million. And we're trying to build a preliminary budget that balances without council having to raise general taxes. One exception the council did approve earlier this year was the 1% ad valorem increase in property tax collections, which was estimated at about $23,000. The The result presented to you on November 2nd was fortunately a balanced budget proposal with no general tax increases that sets aside $1 million in general fund ending reserve and is sustaining our existing services at about the same levels with no staff layoffs. This next slide summarizes all of the different funds that make up the city's budget. Our overall budget is about, well, it's getting north now of just over 32 million in expenditures. In 2021, we anticipate a little higher level of revenues. This summary focuses on, we start with the general fund, which is our largest single fund and accounts for nearly half of the budget on its own. But other significant funds include the street, water, and sewer funds, our major utilities, ambulance and garbage, and a number of smaller funds that go into specific restricted programs and activities. Because of the importance of the general fund in supporting so many of our most visible public services, we do spend more time usually talking about that. Last week at your workshop, the slide that we used here for general fund revenues grouped all 4 of our major tax revenue sources in one slice of the pie that you see there. It's about 70% of our overall revenue, but for this week's presentation, I did go ahead and show you the breakdown in a little more detail by type of tax. So property taxes account for about 2.4 million or 18% of our revenue. Retail sales and use tax is projected at just over 3 million next year at 23% of our revenue. The B&O taxes on private utilities, telephone, electricity, and so forth is about just shy of 1.5 million or 11% of our revenue. And then the taxes on city utilities come in at about 1.8 million or 14%. Coupled with our beginning fund balance, the money we hope to carry forward from this year by being tight with our spending this year, coupled with our beginning fund balance and our tax revenues, that makes up well over 3/4 of our total revenue package. And then we have some smaller charges for goods and services, for jail services, fees and permits and so forth, each of whom contribute less than 10%, sometimes less than 5% to the overall revenue picture. We are expecting the pandemic to have an effect on revenue. Revenues are essentially flat year over year rather than growing as they typically do, 2 to 3%. And that's partly due to the softening that we're expecting to see in several revenue streams due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide summarizes the general fund expenditures. This again is essentially the same information presented to you last Monday on the 2nd. There's one correction I'll make in transferring figures from the budget system into my slide sheet for this. I lined one item about $32,000, I think it was. I placed it inadvertently in Parks and Rec last time instead of in general government. So you'll see those 2 slices have been corrected in this presentation. That's the correct size of those elements in the overall budget picture. But as we discussed last time, the largest single group of activities supported by the general fund are important public safety functions, our law enforcement, jail services, police dispatch, court and justice systems, and then our fire control systems. And so they represent between them a little over half of the overall budget. This information is essentially unchanged from last week, but just as a summary of the revenues that come into our various restricted funds or enterprise funds. These are primarily served by or supported by the charges for the services being delivered, whether it's in water or wastewater, ambulance, stormwater, streets program, or garbage. In some instances, they are also supported by incoming beginning fund balances, or in the case of streets, with an interfund transfer from the general fund. This year, for the first time, we'll also be seeing some revenue from the recently voter-approved Transportation Benefit District sales tax revenue for the street fund. And this is the rough breakdown of expenditures in these restricted funds. And as you can see, for most of them, the dollars go right back out for direct operations and services to the residents of Sunnyside, and in a few instances towards specific planned projects to support the utility infrastructure. These final slides just summarize the enhancement requests. On this presentation, I've just included the requests that we were able to include in this preliminary budget proposal. Last week's presentation, we made a point of summarizing and showing all of the requests that had been submitted. This one, just for space and time, I summarized just the ones that we were able to propose funding for in this preliminary budget. Next steps, as we discussed before, tonight we have our first public hearing on the budget. There is a second public hearing that will take place at your meeting on November 23rd, just before Thanksgiving. We have a workshop scheduled for December 7th, at which we may take further discussion. And then right now we're scheduled to adopt a final budget for 2021 at your regular meeting on December 14th to take effect on January 1st. And that concludes my presentation. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Casey, for that presentation. Did we get any public comments for tonight's public hearing?
I did not get any written comments submitted. Unless you've received anything by email, but I have not received anything yet.
I didn't receive anything either.
Okay, thank you. Council members, any questions or comments on this item? Okay, hearing no questions or comments. This public hearing is now adjourned and will continue to the next regular city council meeting on November 23rd, 2020. Okay, thank you, everyone. Up next, we have our solid waste CPI, business and occupation taxes, and tipping fee increases. Consider adopting an ordinance updating SMC 2.02 to include solid waste rate, B&O taxes, and tipping fees included, effective for the 2021 fiscal year. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This was actually one of the last significant projects or activities that our finance director, Elizabeth Alba, was able to complete for us before she had to go out on medical leave at the end of September. So I'm very grateful that she got this done, because it is an important item, but also something that she has a great deal of familiarity with. There is some history behind this, and so we want to take a little time and walk council through that. This actually dates back to action that council took in 2012 to approve a solid waste contract with Yakima Waste Systems for 10-year term. And so this contract is in effect, and the structure of it is in place through the spring of 2022. Obviously, one of the things we'll be looking at in 21 is how we begin the process of potentially updating, renewing, or resoliciting this. But right now, this is the structure in place. In 2015, the council approved a structure for automatic increases to the solid waste contract. This is proposing contractually required rate increase of 1.27% for all solid waste or garbage services, which would take effect January 31st billing cycle. It's also a slight increase in business and occupation taxes through the Department of Revenue, which will add a few cents to each customer. And then there's also in this agreement and in these rates, the fees for solid waste disposal at the Yakima County landfills. And in November of 2016, the Yakima County Commissioners adopted the resolution and structure for the fees for use of the landfills and transfer stations operated by Yakima County Public Services Solid Waste Division. So the rates for 2017, it's on a biennial basis, 2017, 2019, and 2021 have been set. This increased disposal fee for 2021 also takes effect January 1st. So Elizabeth did the necessary calculations to come up with the rate proposal that you'll see attached in the appendix or in the exhibit. This will be an amendment into the Sunnyside Municipal Code in section 2.02, which is where our rates and fees are codified. Kind of the bottom line is most customers will see about a $3 to $3.50 a year increase. And so it's a fairly modest amount. And I will attempt to answer any questions, but may have to defer to staff if it gets too detailed.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And for questions or comments, we'll start with Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
Councilor Hicks,
No questions.
Councilor Broersma,
No questions, sir.
Councilor Henry,
No questions for me.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
No questions.
Councilor Restucci,
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
okay, and no questions from me either. Okay, what is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve. This is Jim Restucci.
I will second. This is John Henry.
Thank you. Motion by Councilor Restucci, seconded by Councilor Henry, to adopt an ordinance updating SMC 2.02 to include solid waste rate, B&O taxes, and tipping fee increases effective for the 2021 fiscal year. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Counselor Farmer,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Broersma,
Yes.
Counselor Henry,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Counselor Restucci.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 7 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Up next, we have our small works roster agreement with Municipal Research and Services Center. Consider approving a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with MRSC for $275 annually to manage our small works roster, consultant roster, and vendor roster. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to acknowledge up front the work of Public Works Director Shane Fisher and his assistant, Janeth Rangel, who brought this idea forward and did the research and preparations for it. It actually was a service I was previously familiar with from my work in Thurston County. State law provides a mechanism whereby cities and counties can bid out small works projects as defined in the law, have to be below $350,000 in the public works arena, and allows them to use these small works rosters of pre-qualified contractors. It's a more efficient and timely process than doing a formal competitive bid RFP solicitation. However, each city that is maintaining a roster has to meet certain statutory requirements. We have to advertise for new roster applicants on an annual basis, do the legal notices for that. And Sunnyside has historically drawn a fairly small pool of applicants and interest. Currently, across our 3 rosters, we only have 15 contractors signed up with us. we did some research and found that back in 2005, when council enacted the Sunnyside Municipal Code that authorizes the use of a small works roster, at that time, council did authorize the option of potentially using the Municipal Research and Services Center, or MRSC, rosters as well. City just had not yet pursued that idea. So we picked up that idea. As I mentioned, the Public Works Director and Assistant did some research, reached out to MRSC, learned about their current roster services, and have come back with a recommendation that we go ahead now and proceed with that. Part of what is of benefit is that they take over essentially the administration of the roster process for us, including the advertising. Their rate for a service for a city of our size with our capital expenditures is actually only $275 annually, which we estimate is almost cheaper than just the cost of us doing the advertising, let alone our other administration of it. So it definitely has a minor cost benefit to us if we go this way, but they benefit from having a far larger reputation and reach across the state. And our hope is that this will expand the disciplines available and the number of firms available through our rosters. So staff are recommending approval of working with MRSC for our small works roster.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And we'll start with questions or comments on this item with Councilor Henry.
No questions or comments, thank you.
Councilor Broersma?
No, it seems to be like this is a good direction to go. It saves the staff time and energy.
Councilor did you? Oh, it's very hard to hear that. Mr. City Manager, did you hear that comment from?
I think I did. If I might reframe, I believe he commented on the efficiency and savings for staff of being able to do this.
Okay.
That is what I said, sir. Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you. It was just really hard to hear what was said. Thank you for clarifying that. Next, Councilor Farmer.
Just a comment, and I'm sure I pretty much understand it, but as MRSC goes out and we use theirs, our local contractors and local businessmen that would normally bid, will they automatically be on a list to where they would know they could bid on something?
Shane may be able to describe this in a little more detail, but essentially MRSC will take a look at, they'll look at our 15 contractors that we currently have on our rosters and invite them, if they aren't already, invite them to sign on to their roster as well. So they will certainly have that opportunity. It's a very low barrier for vendors to get on the MRSC roster. Director Fisher, is there anything you want to add?
No, that's pretty much it. So basically every year, the MRSC will send out a notice, just as we do, staff does, to our existing contractors so that they can, because they have to reapply every year and update their roster status, because they may decide that they offered more services or different services that they were on the previous year. So that's a chance for them to update their application and the roster. And then the other part of that annual notice, and actually, I think for vendors, I think it's twice a year, but for the consultants and contractors, it's at least once annually. That's an opportunity for anybody who's not currently on the roster or vendor list to get on it. So anybody that's local that wants to be part of that, and we would do phone bids or. When work comes up, they're absolutely, as long as they're on the list, they will get a phone call or an email.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Farmer?
It did, and I have one other one. Just so I understand it, we talked about a $350,000 cap. What does that cap mean?
That means that if the entire project, not just one phase of the project, but the entire project cost exceeds, let's say we have an engineer's estimate, or we figure that it's going to exceed $350,000, then we are required by state law to go to a sealed bid process, competitive bid. If it's under the $350,000, then we can go ahead and put specs together in-house and we can actually call on the roster and just do either phone bids, or we can send emails out to the qualifying contractors to bid on it.
So then anything under $350,000 is still bid on. It's just not a sealed bid then, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And if I might add,
Sure.
just for
Go ahead.
council's assurance, the award of those contracts still comes back to council for approval.
Okay. Councilor Restucci?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. Are you a member of the MRSC Board of Directors?
Yes, sir.
So do you have to recuse yourself on this? Does this come before you as a board member?
Honestly, I don't know, because at this point, I've only attended one meeting where we talked about the budget. So as of now, I have not seen any approvals for new applicants. So if you guys feel like I need to recuse myself, I have no problem with that, but I have not seen any reason why. It's $275. It doesn't benefit me in any shape or form. So I really don't feel like I have to, but if you guys feel like I do, then I will.
No, sir, I wasn't concerned. More that I was more concerned about the MRSC and their position. So
Got it.
as an AWC board member, I've had to deal with this before. So, and I know other members on the MRSC board have had to deal with this as well. So that's why I wanted to make sure.
And if anything, I'll probably, if need, I'll recuse myself at the MRC board, because I will be obviously representing the city that's going to be joining. But at this level, I don't think I should.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for bringing that up. Any additional questions or comments, Mr. Restucci? Councilor Restucci?
No, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Stremler.
I have probably more comments than anything else. I spent quite a few years on the state small works roster and literally did work all over the state. I can see pros and cons to it. To a certain extent, you kind of exclude local contractors quite often, but at the same time, you probably get a better response on bid on them too. Like I said, I was on the state roster for a number of years. I guess being on the council, I'd like to see local contractors do the work versus people coming in from everywhere else in the state. I guess I hate to see the work be contracted out, because I know that's a sticking point with a lot of citizens when people come in and do work for the city or the school district or county, or that they're coming from Spokane, Seattle. A lot of the people feel we're taking work away from local people when we do this, and but like I can see the positive side too, because I was a participant in it. But yeah, that's just my concerns about it. That's really all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks.
Yeah, I can see the point with the local contractors, but I also see the point of saving time and money. So that's about all my comments.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, just a question. When we say small works roster, we're talking like anything from plumbing to electricians to paving a section of a street, sidewalks, all that stuff? Or are we specifically just talking about specific trades?
So there's actually 3 different rosters that are maintained. The small works roster is primarily focused on, as you said, construction trades. The consultant roster is for engineering and architectural design services. And then there's a vendor roster from which you can purchase goods and services. I'm not very familiar with the 15 contractors that currently are on those 3 rosters for the city. I don't know if the Public Works Director has a little more information. Do you know, for example, Director Fisher, how many of those 15, are they all locally based? Are they all on the primarily small work side, or are there also consultants? Or maybe if you could share with council a little more of the breakdown of the current, of our current 3 rosters.
Sure. Yeah, most, all the contractors are local. There's a couple from Yakima. I think there might be 1 or 2 from Tri-Cities, but they're all in our area. So all 15 are, and they range from, most of them are tree service. We have a because we have had obviously some tree issues, as we all know. So we've had tree service guys. We have a couple of kind of all-purpose, kind of all-trade contractors that are on there that have done, building work. We've had done at City Hall, and so I mean it's really kind of a mix, and it's the contractor side of it is anything you can think of. So like the mayor alluded to, yeah, these are plumbers, these are drywall guys, these asphalt companies. I mean, you name it, any construction trade, there is a place on our roster. There's actually the application you fill out has at least 2 pages of all the just any trade you can think of, and they check the boxes when they fill it out. And then when Janice receives it, she goes in and starts a spreadsheet and populates that with all the different trades that they offer, all the different skills they have. So when we go to do a bid for a type of work, we do a search in that spreadsheet for the contractors that actually do drywall or tree trimming or asphalt, and then it brings up what contractors are actually qualified to do that work. And so it's so that's in a nutshell kind of how it works.
And if I might follow up, is it fair to say that there's a lot of gaps on that list? There's a lot of services and disciplines that the 15 contractors we do have simply don't offer?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we have a hard time finding people to get on the roster. What we end up having to do a lot of times is we have to actually reach out and just try to call contractors. We want to try to keep it local. That's always been my philosophy since I've been in Sunnyside, is to try to keep people in Sunnyside and Yakima Valley, on these projects. It doesn't always work out, but what happens a lot of times is we actually go out and we'll try to find contractors that want to bid the work. It may be a couple $1,000s, maybe $10,000 job to bid the work. And if they're interested in doing that, then we have them sign up to get on our small works roster, so we can, because that's the law. We have to, in order to use that small works service, to use that process, they do have to be on a roster. So, but that's really, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly legal to do. But at times it is challenging to find local contractors that have the skill sets that we need to actually do the work and get the bids that are competitive.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like it would definitely benefit the city. It's just time savings, and sounds like not a whole lot of money in savings, but definitely a lot of time on phone calls and getting people on rosters and staff time in getting this completed. So thank you for the explanation. That definitely helps me understand this a little bit better. Okay. That was the last. Okay, I'm the last one. So what is the desire of council on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I got another question. When I was on the state small works roster, this has been years ago, but at that time, the maximum or the small works roster is $25,000 or less. But then if the project was estimated at $15,000 or less, it did not have to go out to bids. And so at that point, it kind of became, if the engineer favored you, he would contact that contractor and get an estimate guaranteed under $15,000. And that way it did not have to even go out to bids. And so I know I personally did some jobs in other areas of the state because the engineer wanted me to do the job. And as long as it was under the 15,000 mark, I didn't have to bid it. I could just give them a written estimate of $14,999, and I had the job. And is there something like that apply to this? And I guess my concern about that would be, if there is, that could bring in contractors from outside, but local maybe could do it for less.
Yeah, and I can speak to that real quick, Mr. Casey. So there may be a provision in there for that. I haven't seen it in the research that I did as far as a minimum. But regardless, Deputy Mayor, I would not practice that. That is, I believe in we need to get 3 bids. That's always been our process. We have to get, obtain at least 3. Sometimes it's a chore to get those 3, even though it's only, it may be a few $1,000s, the project cost itself or the estimate. But we've never looked at any kind of a minimum to be able to just make a phone call and just call somebody we know to come in. We always try to get 3 bids. It doesn't always happen, but at least, the way the auditors look at it and the way I read it doing researching MRC is that if you're not able to get 3 bids in hand, you at least have to document the contractors you did call, when you called them, and that has to be part of that project file. So when the state auditors come in to audit us on some of these expenditures, public works contracting, if we have a bid that we awarded to somebody and we don't have documented who we talked to, when we called them in the file, that's a problem for the auditors. So we always practice the 3 bid rule, and there is no minimum. We bid it out regardless of how small it is.
So are you the one that does the calling on that then? I guess
Yep.
Back to my instance, that they had to get 2 more estimates, but the engineer called two contractors that he knew would be higher, and they of course were higher. So then he gives it to the one that he wants to give it to, and I would like to see that not practiced locally.
Yeah, and I am the one that makes the calls, and we do not practice that.
Okay, that was my concern. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments on this item? Okay, hearing none. What is the desire of council on this item?
I would move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
I'll second. This is Councilor Hicks.
Thank you. So motion by Councilor Henry, second by Councilor Hicks to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with MRSC for $275 annually to manage their small works roster, consultant roster, and vendor roster. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Counselor Henry,
Yes.
Counselor Boersma,
Yes.
Counselor Farmer,
Yes.
Counselor Restucci,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Strimler,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks.
Yes.
Mayor, you have 7 yes votes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. City Clerk. And move on to our next item, which is going to be items from council members. It's going to be a council request status report. Mr. City Manager. You're currently muted, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies. I think the clerk is screen sharing. There we go. So we have a few updates for this week. There's not much new since I think the Public Works Director kind of gave a little bit of an update regarding the disabled parking area at the senior center. We had tried taking a look at use of our real estate excise tax funds. That's a fund source that can be used for capital infrastructure. However, in order to use those funds, the improvements have to be identified in our city's comprehensive plan, in the capital improvement plan. We are currently working, as council knows, on updating that. That'll be completed in the next year. We're also anticipating that if that doesn't pan out, that we may try again for the AARP grant if those get funded in future years. But we think the REIT may be the more certain path forward to be able to get that project completed in the coming year. On tree replacement, let's scroll down a little further. So council's already been updated that we were able to install the 45 replacement trees along the Yakima Valley Highway that take the place of the ash trees that were damaged last year by the ash borer wasp infestation. Now that that work is completed, Public Works is turning its attention back to the tree replacement plan for the downtown area. In order to prepare for that replacement, there's still work to be done on the trees that were removed previously. Stumps have had time to get ready to be removed. That work will be scheduled for this winter. There is still some work that the Public Works Director and his team are undertaking in order to get that all prepared, but they have to be able to remove the stumps, make sure that the sidewalk and the tree walls are prepared, and then we'd be able to go into looking at locations and selecting where we want the new trees and what types of trees. And we anticipate bringing some of those questions back for council input in early 2021. On guardrails, we've made some progress in gaining information, although it's not been entirely encouraging. We were able to meet with our engineering firm, HLA, to discuss the guardrails along either both the southern edge of Riverside Drive as well as the canal side of Crescent Avenue, both of which were identified as potential areas for improved safety. To do both stretches of guardrail will require approximately 1,600 linear feet of guardrail. In the current market, the cost per lineal foot is approximately $50 to $60 per foot, depending on the bid climate. So we're looking at an overall project cost for the guardrails between $80,000 and $96,000. Public Works has begun looking at some grant programs that might be able to help fund these improvements. However, because of COVID freezes at the state level, some of these programs may not be fully funded or may be defunded as the state addresses its state budget shortfalls, which I think in the general fund or the operating budget, we're about 4.5 billion, and in the transportation, we're north of 2 billion. So we're getting more information put together about what it would do to what it would require in order for us to install these, but it's going to take some more work before we can get there.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes.
Just a real quick question or correction there on the transportation side.
Mm-hmm.
In June, we heard 2 billion from the WashDOT secretary. However, in September 27th, they released new numbers, and we're now between 200 and 300 million instead of 2 billion.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is remarkable.
Huge number difference.
Well, that is very encouraging. Let's hope it keeps going that direction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. To have a quick update, I want to on where we're at with homelessness. Staff are continuing to try to work to maintain safe conditions and support some rehousing efforts for some of our homeless residents. Just want to remind and clarify for council, enforcement of the vehicle camping ordinance is suspended, at least partly, because there are no accessible shelter beds available except for young adults 18 to 24 in Sunnyside. I can update that code enforcement recently posted some trash cleanup notices at 2 vehicles parked at city parking lot. Code enforcement officer met with the residents, explained the notice and citation process and the implications if they didn't comply. We've checked again today. The residents have substantially cleaned up the area, but code enforcement will keep checking and may issue a second notice if it's not kept clean. If that does not achieve compliance after a set period of time, then our city code does allow for us to issue a citation and fine. Failure to pay that fine by the deadline set in the code might then result in law enforcement action to impound the vehicles. However, as city attorneys have briefed council previously this year, under the current case law as set by the Ninth Circuit and other courts, it's pretty clear that the impound yard would not be able to keep those vehicles indefinitely or sell them. we would very likely have to waive any fees and fines and then release the vehicles back from impound. It's also possible the city may have a substantive due process obligation to ensure that the residents have safe alternative arrangements for shelter and for storage of their belongings while the vehicles are impounded and the site is cleaned. And since the vehicles are inoperable, releasing them from impound, but when they don't have a practical means of actually being able to then move them, there's cases out there that suggest the city might then have an obligation to return the vehicles back to them at the city parking lot or wherever we impounded them from, or at the end of it. As I said, as the attorneys have briefed us, this is an evolving area of law. Local governments are at high risk of litigation for the steps we take. And I think I shared with council in my last updates, this is one of the reasons I'm spending 6 hours this week in a virtual training on managing the risks associated with homelessness responses that's sponsored by the Association of Washington Cities and the three largest local government risk pools here in Washington. And it's, of course, why we're consulting so closely with our attorneys as we proceed. But we are pleased to see some progress occurring there and hope to sustain that. And then lastly, the fire department residency program. I don't know if the Chief Anderson has been able to join us. I see an iPhone in attendance, but I'm not sure if that's the chief. He has prepared an update in the monthly report, which I'll be sending out to council tomorrow. So unless there's specific questions about that, I'll defer to that. We did note here, he did submit at the beginning of this month a building permit application along with the final plans for the building department to be able to begin work on, get approval to begin work on the remodel. And then, last item on here, with Director Alba's absence, we've not been able to make any headway on breakdown of transaction fees. It's been a lot of other demands on staff time to make sure we keep up with regular financial duties, as well as the state audit that's underway, budget work, and all of the COVID-19 reimbursement work. So we're hopeful when she returns in December that we'll be able to get a quick response back to you on that. And I think that's all we have under the council request report.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Councilors, anything you want to add or remove from that council request status report? Okay, here now we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is other reports, announcements, and/or questions by council. We'll start with Deputy Mayor Stremer. Questions, comments, or reports?
None of the above, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks?
No questions.
Councilor Restucci?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, Councilor Broersma?
Not a great deal other than the fact that I noticed some graffiti tagging on a fence on the corner of Swan Road and Grandview Avenue this evening when I came home.
Thank you. Councilor Henry?
No reports this week, thank you.
Councilor Farmer?
Yeah, there's a house on the corner of, I believe, 9th and Harrison. I think it's been condemned, I'm not sure. There's been a window busted out. The curtains are blowing in and out of the window. They're ripped. The house is in general disrepair. The yards, they wait till the grass gets about 3 feet before they mow it. They probably bring a baler in it and bale it if they wanted to. Why do we have to let that continue to happen? I have seen code enforcement there before, but nothing's changed. The windows aren't boarded up. I don't know who's living in the house, if anybody's living in the house, or what's going on, but it's a blight to the neighborhood.
Follow up and get a report to council on that.
Okay. I do have a question. The building here on 6th Street, they lost some bricks. Is there anything we could do to try to prevent that from happening again? It's right next to the buildings that burned down a few years ago. I did notice the bricks kind of fell off the facade of the building, and we have some like safety net around that. But is there anything we could do with our, code enforcement to try to get that mitigated from potentially hurting someone in the future after they remove some of those bricks that fell off?
So we were alerted to that. The building suffered some damage in one of the windstorm, a couple of weeks ago now. And so we were alerted to that, and we sent code enforcement and crew down there to secure the area and meet with the owner about conducting repairs on that. So I haven't seen an update on that, and I'm happy to kind of to follow up again on that in the morning with code enforcement to find out where we're at in getting that repair completed, or where the owner is at in getting that repair completed.
Okay, thank you. And also, somebody was telling me there was some tires behind around the alleys around that downtown area. I'm not sure if who would be in charge of picking up those tires that get dumped. There's some they told me in front of the it's an empty storefront where they used to sell dresses. Next to I Repair on 6th Street. Jesse's Financial Services, and then there's like a little repair shop for phones, and then there's a door, and they said there was a couple of tires. I think I've seen them in the past. I just never thought about it, bringing it up. And in the alleyway, there appears to be other tires that are just dumped there. I'm not sure if our garbage Yakima waste system just takes them out of the dump, or somebody just throws them outside of the dump, hoping somebody will pick them up. But if we have somebody take a look at them and get rid of them, because obviously they're on our property now, since it's on city alleys.
Absolutely. I will follow up on that in the morning too.
And the last thing, I will be out of town on the 23rd. So our Deputy Mayor Stremler will have the pleasure of running our meeting for the 23rd, as I will be absent. And I'll be requesting an excused absence for that date, as I'll be driving and won't be able to run the meeting that date. So I'll send an email a little bit later to put that in the agenda for an excused absence. And that's all I have for my part. So up next, we have upcoming council meetings. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have just a few left this year. November 23rd, the meeting you just referenced, we expect to hold the second and final public hearing on the preliminary budget for 2021. The city clerk is currently soliciting quotes for the 2021 official newspaper for publishing of legal notices. Fire Chief Anderson is in conversations about a potential mutual aid agreement with Yakima, and if that goes as is expected, hope to have that ready for you by the 23rd. And at that point, our Finance Supervisor, Delilah Sines, will also be bringing forward Budget Amendment number 4. This was one that actually Finance Director Alba had begun work on before her injury, and we've held off on it as we've been going through preparing the budget materials, and we'll be bringing that back in final form here later this month. And then the last item on there, it references an executive session. This is to update council on collective bargaining negotiations that have gotten underway with the Teamsters. And then on December 7th, we have still fairly open workshop, potentially budget. For council's information, I have actually had a preliminary conversation with Planning Supervisor Mike Shuttleworth about the possibility of him doing kind of a 6-month review of his experience coming into the position as Planning Supervisor, some of the projects he's initiated and steps he's taken with the team. So we're tentatively looking at being able to deliver that potentially on December 7th if we don't have other more pressing business. And then December 14th, budget adoption, and any final cleanup that we need to do before the end of the year. And that's it.
All right, we're getting close to the end of the year here, and it sounds like we're making progress with our budget and winding down the year. So thank you for all the hard work this past year, and looking forward to 2021. COVID behind us, hopefully.
Hope so.
Yes. All right, City Manager. Up next, we have our items from City Manager and department heads.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'd let you know this last Friday, but wanted to remind and also alert the public. The city's voicemail system suffered an outage starting last Thursday morning, which made it so that staff could not access voicemail messages. And we did post information online and on social media to kind of alert the public, regretted the inconvenience and thank folks for their patience. IT worked with ShoreTel, the phone provider in CenturyLink. They were finally able to restore our voicemail service late this afternoon. And so staff will be working to catch up on voicemails left by the public over the last 3 days during the course of this week. Next, I'll update on kind of what's going on COVID. Yakima County, as of this evening, is reporting 13,343 COVID-19 infections and 248 deaths, and 13 county residents are currently hospitalized. The state's COVID-19 emergency proclamations expire at midnight tonight, but we do expect legislative leaders to approve some mix of extensions. I do want to note, council here, as in many other cities, has expressed a desire, and we've carried this message to the governor's office, a desire for additional in-person meeting options for governing bodies. I was pleased to see that the Association of Washington Cities, in their recent website update, reports that they think there may be some adjustments made for in-person meetings of governing bodies in the next round of executive orders. So the clerk and I will certainly post any updates when they do become available. Unfortunately, COVID-19 infections and deaths are rising sharply in the United States as people gather indoors more with the colder weather, and folks get kind of frustrated with the public health restrictions. We've now passed 10 million cases and are nearing 250,000 deaths. We're in the last week averaging more than 111,000 new cases per day. News reports today saw that 57,000 Americans are currently hospitalized, and hospital systems in many states, especially in the Midwest, are reporting they're nearing capacity. Unfortunately, infection rates have also begun surging again in the Puget Sound, reaching and surpassing their infection rates from the spring. The Tri-Cities is seeing rising rates of infections and deaths as well. Yakima County has reached phase 2 of reopening, but in the last week, we've seen our largest weekly increase in infections since early August. It's kind of the broken record, but it's vital to keep up our efforts to slow the spread of the disease as much as we can so that we can kind of help our health systems stay on top of it. Please limit gatherings with people who do not live with you. Wear a face mask consistently, stay at least 6 feet apart from others, and wash your hands and sanitize surfaces often. A little bit of a silver lining in all this is that Yakima County Development Association reports that they have completed validating and scoring the applications for our City Cares small business grants. We were able to award grants of up to $5,000 to 54 Sunnyside small businesses. The firms reflected a mix of retail businesses, restaurant and food services, barbershops and salons, and a variety of other services, including trucking, professional services, automotive, screen printing, and so on. YCDA began notifying the recipients last week, who must return and sign their agreement since it's federal funding to receive the funds. I think we had over half of them already respond within about a week's time. We are on track to process all the grants by November 30th in order to qualify for full CARES Act reimbursement. One thing that I'll be monitoring, and that's going to be a little different with COVID, is that the state legislature convenes in January in Thurston County, which is currently in phase 3 of reopening. However, the legislature will conduct most of its business remotely according to their current plans. Lawmakers will participate from their offices on site, and only a few are going to be allowed on the House and Senate floors in the chambers. Reporters will be asked to observe from the galleries above, and the public will lobby and testify remotely rather than being physically present in the chambers or the committee hearing rooms. Having spent a lot of my career working in and around the legislative process, that's going to be a remarkably different feel for things. I'm going to look for another silver lining and think that, well, the remote access might actually provide perhaps easier access, more accessibility for those of us who can't be physically present in Olympia. That's sometimes a burden to try to have to travel in order to convey information to legislators. So we'll see how that plays out. I wanted to share, I've seen most of the newspaper coverage has been on election results at kind of the county-wide level, but I thought council might be interested. I looked this afternoon at the county elections website for Sunnyside precincts. There are 5 main precincts in Sunnyside, and looked at the vote totals. We had a remarkably high turnout. Somewhere between, it's looking like, depending on the race or the contest, anywhere from 26 to 2,700 voters. And I'll point out in the August primary, we had about 1,400 voters participate in that election. So far, we're looking like we'll be somewhere between 26 or 2,800 Sunnyside residents voting. And just to kind of summarize some of the big races in the election for president, the Yakima County Elections Division is currently reporting that 65% of Sunnyside voters voted for the Biden ticket and 34% voted for President Trump. And in governor's race, about 64% voted for Inslee and 36% for Mr. Culp. And on referendum 90, 54% voted to approve referendum 90. This was related to sex, health, education, and schools. 45% voted to reject that. And for county commissioner, Sunnyside voted about almost 60% for candidate Amanda McKinney and about 40% for Vicki Baker. So this was the first time I'd seen kind of breakdown of how Sunnyside had voted. Obviously, not all of the votes are yet counted. There's, I think, around 7,000 or 8,000 still left to be counted, but wanted to share that information with council. And I think I mentioned already that finally on budget, Finance Director Alba, her medical leave is, she'll be out through December 10th. Obviously, this is having an effect on our financial team's capacity, but teams are pulling together and very proud of their work. We'll be working to complete the 2021 budget, engage with the state auditor's accountability audit, process our final CARES Act grant reimbursements, and keep up with other financial processes. And I want to thank Finance Supervisor Sines and the entire team that are supporting us in this. So with that, I'll turn it over to the department heads. And let's see who's on the call. Let's start with Police Chief Escalera.
Good evening, everybody. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. All right, there you are. Actually, we're starting off with basically preparing for the Shop of the Cop program coming up in December. We held our Halloween event, which was significant. It was quite an event to attend. However, it was very slow, and there was no other way that could have been sped up. But it was a great event, especially by those who attended, who made a lot of comments on that. So Shop of the Cop is coming up, and so we'll be looking forward to that. We are addressing some gang-related issues that are going on throughout the city, and also that's bordering our city. And so we're taking a pretty proactive approach on that, and working towards identifying some things and attacking the problem. So other than that, we're looking forward to December and seeing how things work out then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Director Fisher?
Yeah, just real quick. Of course, Public Works staff is preparing for cold weather. So they're getting plows put on the trucks, to getting the sanders mounted on, and getting the sand and salt mixed up and ready to go. And that's all I have.
Okay. I'm not seeing if Chief Anderson was able to join us. There's one individual by iPhone, but I don't think Chief Anderson was able to join us after all. Clerk Renteria, do you have anything for the board, for the council? Yep.
I do. The Lighted Farm Implement Parade was canceled. So we won't be having that event in December, which is very sad, but it's just hard to plan it right now for the Rotary. And that's it.
All right, thank you. And as I mentioned, tomorrow we'll be sending out the monthly update, so you'll be seeing more data and reports from the department heads with that. And as always, we welcome your questions if you have any about that. And thank you very much. That's our report for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Okay, and that is our last item. So there being no further business to come before council, and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 7:55 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a good night.
Night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Not